Today on Notsam Wrestling, the hottest angle of the week between Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens happened off TV. Tribal Combat's date is set. Drew McIntyre is off and running. CM Punk and Seth Rollins get uncomfortable and so much more. This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling. I'm glad that you're all here. Of course, this is one of those weeks where there's been so much to talk about. We had to get our feelings out as well. I'm hoping that you've all put eyes and ears on the emergency Saturday Night's Main Event reaction podcast that me and Megan Moran did immediately after that show, talking about all the matches, the winners, the losers, Chelsea Green, the retro field, Jesse Ventura, the whole thing. If you haven't heard or watched that podcast yet, as soon as you're done with this one, as soon as you've listened to every single minute that I have to talk to you about right now, go over and spend some time with Megan and I that we recorded immediately after watching Saturday Night's Main Event. And luckily, we waited. Luckily, we waited about 20 minutes before we started recording that podcast. People go like this, Sam, why don't you do your reaction podcast live? Why don't you go on live right after the show? Well, because what if something happens? Because on Saturday night, something happened. We walked into Saturday Night's Main Event with expectations. Everybody was blowing up this show, and so many promos were running for it, and the nostalgia was such a big factor of it, and Jesse the Body Ventura coming back and everything. And for the first time, there were at least murmurs that people wondered if Kevin Owens could or would win the WWE Championship. I say for the first time because we haven't heard that much in a serious way when it comes to the matches Cody Rhodes has had following WrestleMania. That's not a bad thing. I mean, he literally spent 2 years trying to get this match with Roman Reigns, trying to get this moment with Roman Reigns. He finally gets the moment. I think he's entitled to having some time with that championship. And he is going to continue to have some time with that championship because on Saturday Night's Main Event, Cody Rhodes came out. That big, shiny, Tarantino-like briefcase that was glowing back at him was, in fact, holding the Winged Eagle, the title, the championship that so many fans wanted Cody Rhodes to bring back the same way he brought back the classic Intercontinental Championship. Cody Rhodes brought back the Winged Eagle for one night only, comes to the ring wearing it. Something just felt so right as he's sitting there now, kind of feeling like he's in the pantheon, feeling like he's in that conversation with all the greats that have worn that title. Because think about it, that championship, that's the one that Hogan wore, that Shawn Michaels wore, that Bret Hart wore, that The Undertaker wore. Stone Cold Steve Austin wore it. He wore it for one day, but he still wore it. And now Cody Rhodes has it around his waist. And we have the match, and it's a good match. Controversial finish. A finish controversial enough that you were wondering, or at least I was wondering, if this was really the way a good guy should be winning his title. Kevin Owens gets the clean victory, except there was no referee in the ring. He had Cody Rhodes pinned. The referee had been knocked out. Cody Rhodes is able to survive through that. Kevin Owens is furious. Another referee gets knocked out. This time Kevin Owens says, no, 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 brings a chair in the ring. Before the referee gets back, Cody Rhodes is able to take advantage of it. Hits a crossroads on Kevin Owens. Onto the chair. Referee comes in, 1, 2, 3. And I read the comments on the emergency podcast. A lot of people saying, listen, this is a tale as old as time. A good guy wrestler is allowed to use the weapon that a bad guy brought in the ring. And this is true, except in this case, Kevin Owens laid on top of Cody Rhodes for what would have been 3 seconds had there been a referee in the ring. That's the only thing that made it different. And then the show went off the air. And I said, this is a pretty straightforward wrestling show. It was a great wrestling show. So much fun with the nostalgia. All the matches were good. All the fans were into all the matches. Let's go talk about what was a pretty straightforward show and how we felt. And then boom, I'm getting texts. My friend is texting me who's in the audience. Oh my God. Kevin Owens just hit a package pile driver. And I'm going, what? Prove it. And she sends me the video that I played on the emergency podcast that we've now seen all over the place, that WWE has actually put their footage of it out on the WWE's YouTube channel. Kevin Owens hits that package pile driver. He walks off with the Winged Eagle WWE Championship. As they're loading Cody Rhodes up onto the stretcher, Kevin Owens stands on top of the chest of the downed WWE champion as if in victory. And while on one side of the arena, they're carting Cody Rhodes off on this stretcher, on the other side of the arena, Kevin Owens is walking back down the aisle where that confrontation with Triple H happens. And Triple H is screaming, and Kevin Owens is screaming back. And Triple H shoves Kevin Owens, and he shoves him multiple times. And Kevin Owens a couple times shoved Triple H back. And I'm going, I did not have Triple H physicality on my bingo card, but we got it. So there's a couple of things at play here. And obviously then Cody Rhodes goes off in an ambulance, and we haven't gotten an update on the condition of the WWE champion. As Kevin Owens, although at one point Triple H shoved Kevin Owens so hard that he actually dropped the WWE championship, the Winged Eagle belt, he was able to pick it back up and exit stage left. Get out of Dodge. So a couple of things. This is the second big non-televised angle in this cycle for Kevin Owens. Of course, this whole thing started with the non-televised angle in the parking lot at Bad Blood. When he and Cody Rhodes had the confrontation, they got into the parking lot fight. That was one that at first they weren't talking about on the air, right? Because they wanted to create the illusion that this is a controversial thing that happened in the parking lot, that this has nothing to do with what we here in the WWE are putting on for you. So then Kevin Owens starts cutting promos, and this is technically also off screen. He's cutting promos and putting them out on his Twitter account, saying, look, you can either invite me back to SmackDown or I'm going to start putting these promos out on social media. So that's how he ends up getting invited back to SmackDown. We think the Randy Orton match is going to happen. The schmaz happens at Crown Jewel. And then on SmackDown, Kevin Owens pile drives Randy Orton. Randy Orton's on the shelf. So now we get all the way up to Saturday night's main event. And really, the thing that has everybody talking about that show is, again, something that happens with Kevin Owens off screen. And I loved it as it was happening already. Because part of me is going, WWE is really smart about how they're capturing eyeballs. If Saturday night's main event had just ended after Cody Rhodes won, I think the general consensus would have been, okay, I was expecting there to be a big angle. There wasn't. But it was just a fun show to watch on a Saturday night. And at the end of the day, the good guy won. All good. No problem. Would have done no ill will to anyone. But then they realized, look, there's this other thing going on with our social media. This footage of Roman Reigns and CM Punk in the shark cage at War Games did 100 million views on Instagram alone. Maybe we should keep seeing where this is going, because clearly if something is big enough, it's okay that it exists on the internet. It's okay that it didn't exist on the television show, because then we can always run it back on the television show. Oh, and by the way, put it on our official YouTube channel. So I think that there's something to that there, but I think more importantly, there's also this thing that I don't believe WWE is just going to start doing big angles on social media because they want to get their social media numbers up. There's a method to the madness. I think it boils down to the fact that Kevin Owens is the one that's been at the center of both of these. Kevin Owens' character is the one that is waiting, not waiting for the TV cameras to necessarily be on before he gets his business done. And it makes sense that the Kevin Owens character would do that. Does it make sense that Chad Gable would do that? Does it make sense that this would? Not really. Most other characters, no. But for Kevin Owens, it works. The idea that there is not this rigid set of rules where, nope, this is how wrestlers act. This is the rules that the promotion has, but then these are the rules that wrestlers actually follow, and all the wrestlers follow them. Not anymore. That's over. You could argue that that kind of ended with Brock Lesnar when they realized that because Brock Lesnar is different, not only is it okay, it makes sense that he would wrestle seldomly. It makes sense that he would only be here for the hot seasons and for big pay-per-views. It makes sense that whether he was the champion or not, he wouldn't just run around defending it on every pay-per-view and half the TVs. It makes sense that that would be Brock Lesnar's prerogative. That character would want to conduct himself that way. And so that's when They get rid of this arbitrary, if you don't defend your title every 30 days, you're stripped of the title rule, and they start to change things. I think when you look at what's going on in WWE right now, you look at Roman Reigns, that character, it makes sense that that character would not be on TV every week. The Roman Reigns character, the head of the table character, is not somebody that prides himself on being the workhorse. He's somebody that prides himself on when he shows up, the crowd is sold out, and he's put food on the table for his family and, quite frankly, for the rest of the WWE. That's who that character is. Cody Rhodes is a different character. Cody Rhodes is a character who prides himself on being the workhorse. Cody Rhodes is the character that prides himself on every single WWE fan that pays a ticket deserves to have my very best. Seth Rollins is the same way. Seth Rollins is a character who prides himself on doing not only what's right for himself, but generally has an integrity when it comes to professional wrestling, when it comes to WWE, when it comes to being a workhorse. He prides himself on that. It would make sense that there would be a box that he would exist inside of. That same way where it would make sense that Cody as a character would be at every show, and where Seth as a character would want to be at every show. The same way that same logic makes sense that Roman would be there as little as possible. And when he is there, the whole world should stop because he feels the whole world should stop for him, and he behaves accordingly. Using that same logic, it only makes sense that the Kevin Owens character would not follow these arbitrary rules of, okay, folks, show's over, time for everyone to go home. If this is a guy who's cutting promos in his car because he has things that he wants to do, he's not operating on a level where, okay, there are things that I want to do, but first and foremost, I want to make sure that it's a good TV show and that all the audience gets everything that they want. Absolutely not. This Kevin Owens that we're seeing is operating from a purely selfish place. As a matter of fact, if anything, this Kevin Owens that we're seeing is motivated by the idea that for the first time he let his guard down and he allowed Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes in as friends. And what happened was he felt betrayed. What happened was he made himself vulnerable to that, and he feels betrayed by Cody Rhodes. He feels betrayed by Randy Orton. And when he had a chance months and months ago to take advantage of his friend and win the WWE Championship, he did not take advantage of his friend because for the first time he had a real friend. And what happened? He didn't win the championship, and that friend went and teamed with the biggest enemy that he has in the company. So now, not only is he back to how he was before, he's much, much worse. Now it's like, I know before it was, I'm just kind of this selfish guy because that's my nature. Now it's not only is that my nature, but I've seen what happens when you're on the other side of this thing, and I'm never doing that again. So, of course, it would make sense that Kevin Owens is not going, man, well, the premium live event is over. Bad Blood is over. So let me just stew in this. And then once the cameras turn back on Friday for SmackDown, that's when I'm really going to give it to Cody. No, because he watches the shows. He knows how these shows work. It would make sense that he's going, oh, I'm so mad at Cody. What's that? Oh, network time is over? Network time's up, so we're not on TV anymore? Okay, well, I'm going to wait 6 more days. But I tell you this, Friday, I'm really going to give it to him. No. Why would he feel that way? Why would he care whether the cameras are on or off? Why would he care about making sure that every fan got what they wanted, that the people running the company got what they wanted? This is not the MO of Kevin Owens. And when Triple H came out and told Randy Orton all those weeks ago, I don't want anything to do with this, Kevin Owens, man. I'm protecting you. I don't want to put you in there with this, Kevin Owens. And Randy was like, yeah, that's BS. Triple H said, okay, and all the words of Triple H are not only coming true, they're coming so true that now Triple H is in a shoving contest with Kevin Owens, which, by the way, I mean, don't tempt me, don't threaten me with a good time. Kevin Owens and Triple H putting their hands on each other, all I can think about is this idea that, can you imagine? It's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. But Triple H having one last match and it being against Kevin Owens. This is the Kevin Owens that we saw show up on WWE after being in NXT. Answer the John Cena Open Challenge and pin John Cena on a pay-per-view. Fresh off of NXT. This is the same Kevin Owens that brought Stone Cold Steve Austin out of retirement to main event one more WrestleMania against him. John Cena, Stone Cold Steve Austin, adding Triple H to that list. I mean, my God. My God. I don't think it's going to happen. But it was so crazy to just see hints of it. It was almost like, don't do it. Don't do it. Because all you're going to do is make me want to see it. Don't do it. Of course, we're still sitting there realizing that with all this going on, Sami Zayn's in the back of Kevin Owens' head somewhere. And what I think is really interesting is here on this podcast and a lot of other places, I think there were a lot of people that thought, okay, this Kevin Owens, Cody Rhodes thing is an appetizer to Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton. I think I even said that here. I said, what feels like the beginning of the Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens story is really just the beginning of the Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton story. And while I do believe that the two stories are intertwined, I think putting it in that context makes it feel too much like this Kevin Owens, Cody Rhodes thing is the appetizer to Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes, when in reality, you've got two full meals staring down the barrel at you. Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes is a full-ass entree. And you have to wonder when that match is going to happen. Now, Cody Rhodes is probably the master of the three-match series. You know, he comes back from AEW and shows up at WrestleMania and has his three-match series with Seth Rollins. 3 pay-per-views in a row, and he wins all 3 times. The last one with that big, iconic torn pec at the Hell in a Cell. Then he goes on after WrestleMania and WrestleMania 39 and has his 3-match series with Brock Lesnar, where he lost, then he squeaked one by, then he won definitively. Now we're looking at a proposition where within the course of a few months, we need a third Kevin Owens match. But this one is probably the most unique of all. Because this one, the first match is 2 friends, and the story we think hasn't started, but really, these are the seeds being planted. The second match is Kevin Owens does kind of get screwed, and he mentioned on Twitter that he got screwed. But Cody Rhodes is able to win. However, after the match, not only does Kevin Owens take the Winged Eagle title away from Cody Rhodes, but he packaged pile drive. And this is the first time in 10 years. Kevin Owens been in the WWE for 10 years. We haven't seen a package pile driver since Ring of Honor. Maybe PWG. Kevin Owens unleashes the package pile driver for the first time in 10 years. To the point where there has to be another match. And now we get to a third Kevin Owens, Cody Rhodes match. And when is that going to happen? You know, is that going to happen? The 2 big next premium live event type shows are, we're getting another Saturday Night's Main Event on the 25th of January. And then 1 week after that, and that'll be from San Antonio. And then 1 week after that, we've got the Royal Rumble. However, about 3 weeks before Saturday Night's Main Event in January, you've got Netflix Raw. And Netflix Raw is already looking like it's going to be huge. The question is, are you, and we're going to talk about Roman and Solo for sure, but is the idea that Netflix Raw is a show that's going to be centered around Roman and Solo? Or are you going to make this just the most massive Raw that anybody can conceive of? And if that's the plan, then the idea of Cody Rhodes showing up, finally getting healthy just in time to get to Los Angeles and face Kevin Owens at that Netflix Raw, that might be it. But I think more realistically, January 6th is a great spot for a confrontation to happen between Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes. Then you can have the match at Saturday night's main event. And then whoever loses that match, and if Kevin Owens loses it again, then he can walk into the Royal Rumble match with this sense of purpose. Where now we've taken this idea that Cody Rhodes is going to be somehow involved with the Bloodline at WrestleMania. Because now, I mean, I would argue, just based on the timeline in front of us, that maybe not. Because I think Kevin Owens can walk in to the Royal Rumble if he loses to Cody Rhodes at Saturday night's main event, going, no, I'm taking it from Cody and I'm taking it at WrestleMania. And maybe he can make us believe. Now Kevin Owens becomes a real possibility that he could actually win that Royal Rumble match. And then something happens in the Royal Rumble match that takes Kevin Owens on whatever road that he's going to be going down to WrestleMania. And we start telling the story of Randy Orton. Because if we haven't gotten to Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes by the Royal Rumble, you've got to believe WrestleMania is going to be Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton, right? Right? Or maybe not. Maybe it's going to be Kevin Owens next. Maybe The Rock's going to show up. I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities, but it feels like confrontation on the 6th of January on Netflix. Match, Saturday night's main event. There's lingering effects of that at the Royal Rumble, but those lingering effects end up pushing Kevin Owens this way. And the fact that you go into the Royal Rumble with Kevin Owens having resentment issues towards Cody Rhodes, except he starts a fight with somebody else, is my favorite thing to happen, because nowadays everything counts. I don't know if you heard about this, but this is rule number 3, okay? You got to watch the product, okay? And you got to speculate wildly, but you got to remember that everything counts. Those are the 3 rules. And in a world where everything counts, if Kevin Owens loses the 3rd match, walks into the Royal Rumble, has a new problem with somebody else, but still has resentment towards Cody, then who knows? A month later, 6 months later, a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later, the way they're telling these stories, we can double back to it and settle those differences. But we are starting to tell a story where it does have that level of depth, and that's pretty amazing. I don't think that's not what I saw coming out of Saturday night's main event. I don't think a lot of people saw that. I think people were either like, maybe Randy Orton will come out, maybe The Rock will come out. I think a lot of people thought that this match was going to end, and if Cody Rhodes won, it would just lead to whoever the next opponent for Cody Rhodes was. Not realizing that the show was going to go off the air. People were going to go, that was fun. And then the real juice would get squeezed out of the berry that was Saturday night's main event. What a time, what a time. We got into it deeply on the emergency podcast that Megan Morant and I did right after Saturday night's main event, but it was a big Saturday night's main event as well for Drew McIntyre. So Drew McIntyre has been back for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and talk about making up for lost time. This guy is immediately back to making himself the center of the conversation and somebody that simply cannot be ignored. This thing where in 2020, he was finally the actual chosen one, not the person that was named the chosen one, but the actual chosen one, who had his Royal Rumble spot with Brock, who was planned to go to WrestleMania and win the title, who goes to WrestleMania and wins the title, except he does it in front of nobody, and all the momentum slips away. And this character now is directly reflecting real life, where Drew McIntyre is now not allowing the spotlight to fall off of him for even a second. We saw so much go down. First, we saw Drew McIntyre attack Sami Zayn on Raw. Right? He comes out, he attacks him, and this was not week 1. This was week 2. He attacks Sami Zayn on Raw. Jey Uso gets attacked by somebody. The next week, Drew McIntyre comes out, beat the stuffing out of Sami Zayn. He gets thrown out of the building. But before that, he has this pre-tape promo, which was amazing, by the way, just kind of breaking down everything and just casually, just in the pre-tape, goes like, yeah, I took out Jey Uso. Just like there's no whodunit. This ain't the Street Profits. This ain't Jade Cargill. I don't know what was more satisfying. Drew McIntyre just straight up in his pre-tape promo going, yeah, that's why I took out Sami Zayn and Jey Uso. It's like, you took out Jey Uso? Or the end of NXT this week when Ava was like, don't worry, Eddie Thorpe. We're going to find out who mysteriously jumped you before Deadline. And he was like, you don't have to. I did that myself. I was faking it. I didn't want to do Deadline. Now I got a title match. I mean, brilliant. Mwah, chef's kiss. But both of them I absolutely love. So we have that going in. And then on Thursday, I go into Sirius XM, to be a part of the Busted Open year-end awards show and present an award to most popular wrestler that went to Jey Uso, rightfully so, of the year. And Drew McIntyre comes in studio. And I didn't know he was even going to be there. But all of a sudden, he's just talking about where he's been. And he starts talking about how what a distaste he has for the fans now, how the business has changed. He said he went home after Hell in a Cell and he saw all his family and he realized how much he had missed, how much he hadn't been there for, and how much he could have been there for. But he chose the business. He was giving and giving and giving. And now he's here to take. He's in the business now simply to take from it so that he can live the life that he wants to live. And he got pissed and he ended up walking out. To the point where, like, the Busted Open, I mean, Bubba Ray, Mark Henry, Tommy Dreamer, Dave Lee, they're all looking around like, what the hell just happened? Security guard at Sirius XM is looking at me going, is this part of the show? I go, don't ask me. I live in this world. I never know if it's part of the show or not. Apparently it wasn't, because Drew storms out and nobody saw it coming. They thought they were going to get him to do a TikTok about Christmas. It wasn't happening. So then he shows up on SmackDown the next night, and while Big Jim is talking about what a big year it's going to be for Big Jim Uso, he's got a broken toe. He gets claymored out of his crutch by Drew McIntyre completely out of nowhere. And then it becomes clear. Drew McIntyre has come back to the WWE after his war with CM Punk that took up most of this year to finally be the one who can take out the Bloodline. This is a guy who has hated the Bloodline from the beginning. This is a guy who was humiliated at the very first Clash at the Castle and had his moment taken away from him. I remember after that first Clash at the Castle, I think like a week later, I was doing like a pre-show or something in NXT. And I was talking to Wade Barrett about it. And he was like, that was the moment, man. That was Drew's moment, and he didn't get it. And he was disappointed. I was disappointed. That was the first, like it was before it was Sammy at Elimination Chamber, before it was Cody at WrestleMania 39. It was Drew McIntyre at that first Clash at the Castle that you went, that was it. You could have just put it back on Roman a month later. Why wouldn't you take advantage of that moment? And those feelings never went away, right? Drew McIntyre, it shaped who Drew McIntyre was coming out of that. It took him a while to find himself there. But now, what does he see? He sees the same thing that Kevin Owens sees. He sees the same thing that Seth Rollins sees. He sees the Bloodline back. They're baby faces now. Everybody's cheering Roman Reigns. Jey Uso, Sami Zayn, back on Roman Reigns' side. CM Punk is teaming with the Bloodline. Cody Rhodes is teaming with the Bloodline. And Drew McIntyre is back in this space that he was in earlier this year where he goes, has the whole world gone absolutely crazy except for me? If not only are you guys not taking out the Bloodline, but you're teaming with them. If nobody else is going to do it, I'll just do it myself. So we get to Saturday night's main event, and Drew beats Sami Zayn. It was a great match. Crowd was super into it. What a fantastic opener it was. But Drew beats Sami clean. Claymore out of nowhere. Sami getting back in that ring and just boom. Just somehow there was a Claymore that appeared out of thin air, and Sami Zayn goes down. Drew leaves, and first he said something to the effect of, that's one, right? He said something like that when he won the match. But then there was a video released on WWE Digital where he was walking back through the curtain, and he went 1 down, 4 to go, clearly saying he's the Bloodline hunter now. That's what he's back in the WWE to do, which is great because Jimmy Uso is on the shelf. Roman Reigns has his own stuff going on with Solo Sikoa and God knows who's next. So what is Drew McIntyre looking at? Jey Uso. You're sitting there going, well, if Drew McIntyre is right, and he is right, anybody that's been watching the product, and that's rule number 3. No, that's rule number 1. Watch the product. That's rule number 1. If anybody's been watching the product, you know Drew McIntyre is right. Kind of hard to boo the guy unless Jey Uso is the guy who's next for him. Jey Uso, I just told you, the most popular superstar of 2024, Jey Uso, who is beloved by everybody. You go to shows, and whether Jey Uso is on the card or not, the Yeet shirts are everywhere. People are wearing them in blue and pink and red. Whatever color you're putting them out, they're selling them. Jey Uso is getting introduced last at War Games. And introduced last when they win War Games. So it's not just about entrances. I mean, Jey Uso is the man right now, and everybody loves Jey Uso. So the idea that Drew McIntyre is going to go after Jey Uso, nobody wants to see Jey Uso put down regardless of what the Bloodline have done. So now you've got your good guy versus a bad guy regardless of what their motivations are, and I think it's fantastic. But I think from a bigger picture, this story really demonstrates the depth of storytelling that we get in WWE these days, and why it is so difficult to judge something as it's happening. When you say let him cook, sometimes let him cook means wait till SmackDown, wait till Raw. Sometimes let him cook means wait 3 or 4 years from now when it all makes sense and it all gets paid off. Because when we were watching the Bloodline run amok across WWE, it's like, first of all, this is a 3.5-year-long storyline. That while, yes, the nucleus of it was this group of Samoans, and I am counting Sami Zayn as one of them, the reality is that this was a universe that surrounded the Bloodline. And after 3.5 years of that title, 6 months of fallout, so a 4-year-long storyline that we're at right now, as we see the Bloodline kind of not really be about taking control of the entire WWE anymore and more just be about this inner family drama. No. The rest of the superstars in the locker room that existed in that 4 years that the Bloodline had a tyrannical control over the WWE, they're all like, what do you mean? We're over here now, you guys do your own thing. No. Nothing about us forgives you. Nothing about us has forgotten what you've done. And so you go back now and you're like, well, all the times that you're frustrated. Why did Roman Reigns always win by cheating? This is why Roman Reigns always won by cheating. Because even though he had the title for all that time, every single one of those people that Roman Reigns worked with are today stronger than they were when Roman Reigns faced him. And it's one thing to be annoyed that there's a guy who's really good and beats everybody. You can't really 4 years later rise up and fight against that. He's just really good and beats everybody. But if it's a guy who's cheating, it's a guy who's taking advantage of the rules, it's a guy who is winning in ways that are not honorable, well, if that's the case, then hell yeah, you can all bear that resentment. Hell yeah, we can have this looking like the French Revolution. And what I love about it is the French Revolution is so great, right? Because the monarchy held these French people down so completely that one day they rose up. Except when they rose up, France went through this reign of terror where it was a terrible time when the people rose up. People were getting executed. Nobody knew who was in charge. If you said the wrong thing about the people who had taken over the government, now you're executed. And that's what it feels like right now. That the Drew McIntyres and the Seth Rollins and the Kevin Owens have been driven to this point of absolute madness by the Bloodline. So they want to take over the Bloodline, and anybody that doesn't line up with them, they're enemies too, and they're going to get taken out. And Cody Rhodes felt that via package pile driver. And Drew McIntyre is on the same road. I had no idea until I started having this conversation that the Bloodline story is actually the story of the French Revolution. And I love the French Revolution, so no wonder I love the Bloodline. It's amazing when you break this all down. I mean, it answers that question, right? Like, you're watching going like, he just keeps cheating to win. Like, if this were happening in real life, wouldn't the other wrestlers be furious about it? If this was happening in real life, would people just put up with this? The answer is no. You just had to give them time. You had to give them time for them to get stronger and for the Bloodline to get weaker. And none of the stuff we're getting now happens if we don't have the stuff before. And that's amazing. Because there was a time in professional wrestling in general where story's over, next, move on. Goldberg beat the entire roster in WCW. And when he was knocked off his high horse, there wasn't an army of people in WCW looking to chase after him. As a matter of fact, WCW hadn't even really changed. There wasn't this sort of second coming where now that Goldberg is no longer the dominant force that he was, let's reassess what WCW even looks like. That never happened. That's what's happening now with the Bloodline, and Drew McIntyre is kind of the default arbiter of all of it. Let's talk about this more expansively maybe another time because I have so much to talk about today, but Drew coming in, right, and being in this story with CM Punk all year, and not only holding his own, but commanding the spotlight to himself. When CM Punk is the guy that he's in there with, CM Punk's first rivalry in the WWE in 10 years, and Drew McIntyre is able to command the spotlight. The Bloodline, the hottest act that wrestling has seen in years and years and years and years, Drew McIntyre is able to command the spotlight. It's a really interesting thing. But at the end of the day, Drew takes out Sami Zayn. Sami's done. Now he's moved on to Jey Uso. He said 1 down, 4 to go. So Jey Uso is obviously next. Jimmy Uso will get himself healthy, get that big toe, and Big Jim will be after Jey, I would imagine, for Drew McIntyre, I would think. But then there's 2. Does Drew McIntyre have to take out the wise man? I don't think so. I mean, he's the wise man. You're not going to fight the wise man. Unless you're the new Bloodline. You're Jacob Fatu, maybe. But no, you're not going to fight the wise man. So you got Roman Reigns. And Drew comes from a place of logic. Drew's like Kevin Owens. Slightly different set of rules, but the Drew character is like Kevin Owens in the sense that you wouldn't go, well, Drew had a problem with this guy, but now he's a villain and Drew's a villain, so Drew doesn't have a problem with him anymore. That's not how Drew, the character, operates at all. The 4th person is Solo Sikoa. I'm convinced of it. It's got to be. Because Solo Sikoa was part of this body that drove Drew McIntyre to the point of insanity. Solo Sikoa was literally the one that interfered in the match with Roman Reigns and took everything away from Drew McIntyre, took that moment away from Drew McIntyre. It was Solo Sikoa making his debut on the main roster and joining the Bloodline. Solo Sikoa joined Roman Reigns' Bloodline at the expense of Drew McIntyre winning the WWE Championship from Roman Reigns on Drew's home continent. And that one was in Scotland, right? Maybe in his home country. So you mean to tell me that Drew's not coming for Solo Sikoa as well? He said 4 to go. I believe Solo Sikoa is absolutely on that list. And that's going to get real interesting because that could mean that Drew has a war with the Bloodline as a villain. And then once he's done with the Bloodline as a villain, he moves on to the new Bloodline because now he's got to take on Solo Sikoa. And Solo Sikoa's backup include Tama Tonga, maybe Tonga Loa is back by then, and Jacob Fatu. These are 4 villains in the new Bloodline. Maybe Drew McIntyre by default actually becomes a babyface, a good guy, a hero, because he's taking on Solo Sikoa in the new Bloodline after the old Bloodline. Who knows? It's wild speculation, but that's what we do here. That's rule number 3. And by the way, shout out to Big Jim. Keep hearing it's going to be a big year for Big Jim. Jimmy Uso showing up in the ring on SmackDown by himself to let the world know that that's what That's what they were waiting for. Forgive the interruption, but we all love a great deal. And Mint Mobile is the great deal when it comes to cell service. Get amazing wireless cell service for just $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan. No hoops to jump through, no BS. All of Mint Mobile's plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text, all delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. It's so easy. You go on, you get your SIM card. There really is no hassle at all. You pop it in the phone, and all of a sudden, you're talking on the phone for what it should cost to talk on the phone. It couldn't be easier to make the switch. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/notsam. That's mintmobile.com/notsam. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/notsam. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on the first 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 gigs on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. But big news coming off of SmackDown. The challenge was made by Roman Reigns. He and the wise man in the background, so the wise man and Roman Reigns appear to be on the same page again. Still got a lot of questions about that one, but they appear to be on the same page again. They're hanging around Roman Reigns' boat. I would imagine they're in Florida. It looked like Florida. And Roman Reigns, this was a great promo because Roman Reigns said, Solo, your bloodline got one and my bloodline got one. So instead of painting War Games to be what I think a lot of us saw it as, which is a definitive win and statement, Roman Reigns' bloodline sitting here going, we're the dominant ones, end of discussion, story over. Roman Reigns is factoring in the match that Solo and Jacob won. Or no, it was a 6-man. The match that Solo and Jacob and Tama won against he and the Usos when Solo pinned Roman Reigns. He's going, we're even now. He's saying that the Roman Reigns bloodline came into War Games at a deficit. And maybe that's why the wise man said from the beginning, if we don't win War Games, we're toast, we're finished, we're done. Because we're already at a deficit. So the original, the OG bloodline winning at War Games puts everything even Steven. And now it's time to talk about the Ulafala. And Roman Reigns, and it goes back into history. You know I love that everything counts. We're not just making up. The Ulafala was gifted to us from heaven. A hawk came down from the skies and placed it upon my neck. You weren't there, but trust me, it was amazing. No. There's footage of it. We have actual footage of Roman Reigns being crowned with the Ulafala by Roman Reigns' uncle and Roman Reigns' father, Solo Sikoa's 2 great uncles, Afa and Sika, the late, great Wild Samoans, one of the greatest tag teams of the 1980s, putting that Ulafala around the neck of Roman Reigns and crowning him as the tribal chief. And from that day forward, it was when Roman Reigns, being the one to provide for the family, being the one to lead the family, was not a hypothetical, not a statement that Roman Reigns just said, not an observation that he had made, but it was a matter of fact as bestowed upon him by the elders, Afa and Sika. And Roman Reigns cites that, and he shows the footage of it. He says, you can't just take it. That's not how it works. And while Roman Reigns, he didn't mention it in the promo, but he absolutely did say Solo Sikoa was next in line. There's a big difference from saying you're next in line and then the guy who's next in line saying, okay, my turn. No. I'm still the front of the line. I'm still here. No, not your turn. Your turn is next, but it's still my turn. So Roman Reigns makes the challenge. January 6th. Tribal warfare, Roman Reigns versus Solo Sikoa. And while Solo doesn't specifically respond, on SmackDown it's treated as a challenge. Triple H sends out the tweet, January 6th, Netflix Raw, Roman Reigns versus Solo Sikoa, tribal warfare. And Roman Reigns says, you leave your bloodline at home, I'll leave my bloodline at home, which I don't know. That statement in and of itself should be banned. How many times are we going to hear, you leave your bloodline at home, I'll leave my bloodline at home? The bloodlines never get left home. Everybody travels with their bloodline. Roman Reigns has historically for years always traveled with his bloodline. Solo Sikoa learned that from the Big Oos and always travels with his bloodline. So I do think we're good, but the bloodline numbers are even now. Jimmy Uso's out with the toe. Tonga Loa's out with the torn bicep. So Roman's got, I guess, Jay and Sammy watching his back, if Sammy is still Oos after that beatdown he got from Drew McIntyre. And Solo's got, Jacob and Tama Tonga, which when you really break it down, over the last couple months, when we see what that bloodline has become, when you put it that way, Solo is going to be flanked by Tama Tonga and Jacob Fatu. It doesn't feel attainable. It doesn't feel beatable. But I think huge, and lets you know how WWE is looking at Netflix Raw. That WWE is looking at Netflix Raw as the spot where that match would happen. This is a match that people were speculating about for WrestleMania. And it's like, no. WrestleMania, you're going to have Netflix Raw with WrestleMania quality matches on it. You're going to have Saturday night's main event with mega matches on it. You're going to have Royal Rumble mega matches, Elimination Chamber mega matches. I mean, this WrestleMania season is going to be nuts if this is how we're starting on the 6th. So I'm very much looking forward to it. People are already acting like this is going to be the blow-off, and I don't think there's any guarantee that this is going to be the blow-off. I think there's a couple of things we're going to see Netflix Raw. I think Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens have some kind of confrontation. I already said that. We're going to get to something else in a moment. But I think that we don't just see those 4 members of the bloodline on the outside of the ring. There's no doubt in my mind that John Cena will be at Netflix Raw. I don't know this as a fact. But if he's back for the year 2025, what better place to kick it off than on Netflix? I also love that the WWE is realizing that Netflix is, nobody's scrolling through and they land on Netflix. This is the first time that Raw has exclusively been on a service where it is a destination. You have to know in advance, I am turning on my Netflix app, I am clicking on Raw, and I am watching the show. And I think that's why, especially for the first episode, it's like everybody in the world needs to know Roman Reigns versus Solo Sikoa is happening on this show. But with the fact that there's a high probability that John Cena will be there, I don't think he'll be the only legend. I think I gotta believe that The Rock shows up for Tribal Combat. I gotta believe that on January 6th, we find out what side of the bloodline, if any, The Rock has been supporting. Who's to say The Rock doesn't have his own bloodline? Who's to say The Rock hasn't been formulating his own faction? Who's to say The Rock is going to support either one of them? But I think he probably will. And I think the idea of The Rock is flanked by Solo, Jacob, and Tama Tonga. And Jey Uso and Sami Zayn, like Roman's whole bloodline, is busy with Drew McIntyre, is busy with all these other guys, that now Roman Reigns is going to have to get through this unbeatable force just to eventually get to The Rock. I mean, that's amazing to me. And as much as in my opinion, I was like, you got to go Cody versus The Rock because you got to find out what that gift. The Rock said he's coming back for Cody, but time is a shapeless beast. Who's to say what time even is? Maybe we're not doing Rock and Cody first. Maybe with the way the way we're heading into January and the positions that everybody is in, it's almost like, are you on the Cody story side or are you on the Roman story side? And I feel like The Rock fits in more on this Roman story side. I mean, that said, at the end of last year, Cody and Roman were not telling a story yet. So who's to say? But I do think that this bodes very well. I do not think. Here's where I would do it. Roman Reigns beats Solo Sikoa and has the Ulafala back, is the tribal chief. But then The Rock shows up. And The Rock stares him down, gets in the ring, not in the aisle, gets in the ring, stares him down. And maybe that's how we go off the show. Although, do you want The Rock versus Roman Reigns to be for the Ulafala? But is Solo Sikoa going to hand the Ulafala over to The Rock? Or maybe this is when Roman Reigns is the tribal chief and The Rock reminds him that his blood ancestry goes back to the high chief Peter Maivia. So Roman Reigns is the tribal chief, and maybe The Rock has an even bigger Ulafala. And The Rock is now the high chief. And now you've got the tribal chief versus the high chief for whatever, I don't know. I don't think Grand Poobah is how they would call it. But whatever the title would be for the top chief. You know, because when Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns are running around with their championships, what does the final boss do? He gets the People's Championship. He's like, well, my belt's even better than yours. And that belt is beautiful. So maybe The Rock maybe Roman Reigns wins the Ulafala back and is the tribal chief again, but The Rock comes out with something like that's like white and gold. I would say a Ulafala that's like white and gold. And goes, yeah, except I'm the tribal chief. I'm the high chief. I come from Peter Maivia, okay? And now what we're settling is not about championships anymore. It's about tribal chief versus high chief. And that's how you get to a main event of WrestleMania without Cody Rhodes or Gunther being involved in it at all. Neither title is involved. And now you've got this over here. Maybe it's just something I'm setting up. I have no idea. I have no clue. But that's the fun of professional wrestling right now, because the other match that we're sitting here on the precipice of, the other story that's being told, is CM Punk and Seth Rollins. And boy, have they been having some great back and forths. I have loved the promos that we've been seeing with Seth Rollins and CM Punk, specifically last week on Raw, because I think that, but I do think when you think about the match that is eventually going to happen between CM Punk and Seth Rollins, you're not looking at an 8-month build the way you were with Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. The reason the Drew McIntyre and CM Punk story was so long is because CM Punk could not wrestle. You had to have that thing go from April to August, because August was the earliest that CM Punk could wrestle. But damn, did we want CM Punk on that television set, and I'm glad we had him. That said, I don't think that we're starting a CM Punk-Seth Rollins rivalry in December to wait until April for the match, especially the end of April. It doesn't strike me as likely. It's very possible. I have no idea. But to me, I feel like we're going to get it sooner. Let's talk about what we're seeing, though. I mean, we see Punk doing a sit-down interview with Jackie Redmond, and he doesn't want to talk about the favor. Okay, so again, that's just sitting over here. You got to love it. The same way Cody Rhodes and The Rock, the gift, is going to sit over here. Eventually, we'll talk about it. CM Punk's favor is going to sit over here. Eventually, we'll talk about it. You don't have to put a bow on story A before you get to story B. Leave it a little open. We'll get back there after we do story B. And maybe when we get back there, we'll then get back to story B again in the middle of story C. It's beautiful. It's the way things should be. CM Punk says he's confused to why Seth hates him. And they start going back. They start going back in time. And you know I love when they go back in time. I love the history of it. I love when they get real and they reference real stuff that we're aware of. CM Punk says, yes, at one point, Seth Rollins asked me to train him, but he asked me to train him for free. I'm not training that guy for free. Are you kidding me? They never mentioned that in the story. He wanted me to do it for free. I'm trying to make these bucks here in this business, pal. I go, okay, I didn't even know about that, really. And then I love this. Shield references. They pop me. I think they pop you. Everybody loves a Shield reference. And CM Punk says something to the effect of, yeah, it's great that Seth Rollins is on the list of top 10 wrestlers in the WWE right now, but he used to be on the list of top 10 wrestlers most likely to be fired, and I shielded him from that. And you go, whoa, of course the Shield came in originally as a group that was protecting CM Punk, but CM Punk has said on the record that the Shield was kind of an idea that he had. His original vision for the Shield was actually Rollins, Ambrose, and Chris Hero instead of Roman Reigns. They put Roman Reigns in there, which, by the way, eventually that's got to come up. That Punk was trying to not have Roman Reigns in the Shield to begin with. That's a story for another day. He says everything that Seth has done, he did before Seth, and he did it better. Money in the Bank, WWE Championship, whatever it is. He says Seth is great. He's impressive. He's the man. But the headline here is the starter's back, so second string is going to have to sit back down on the bench. And it's like, wow. That sounds like a guy who knows that he has clout that has decided to go ahead and flex that power that he has. It's one thing to kind of be like, yeah, I'm CM Punk and it's awesome to be back. It's another thing to be like, yeah, I'm CM Punk and it's awesome for you that I'm back. And it does skirt on this line of like, I don't know if that's the most likable trait in the world, but all of us fans agree with what he's saying, and we're all still psyched that not only is CM Punk back, but he's telling these great stories and having these great rivalries. So it's still impossible to boo the guy, but I at some point we'll get there, I'm sure, right? So Seth comes out and he does an in-ring promo that is just excellent. I mean, Seth has been doing the most excellent promo work because he's been doing so much of his stuff in the ring completely by himself. He doesn't really have any on-screen allies. And he's also very often in there taking opinions that are unpopular. He's got to go into a ring and try to convince the audience why CM Punk is a scumbag. And the audience has paid to see CM Punk. The audience loves CM Punk. And Seth doesn't have a cool group around him. Seth doesn't have anything except, hey, man, this is what I had to go through. Yeah, Punk didn't want to train me, whatever that was. But look, here's the truth. 10 years ago, CM Punk up and left. And I was his friend. And I wrote him. I texted him. I called him. I got ghosted by CM Punk. And when he's making that point, I'm like, look, man, you settle your personal stuff on your own. This guy ghosted me, to me, is not going to do it for me. But then Seth did it for me. Seth comes back and he goes, and then every minute he could for the 10 years that he was gone, he buried this company. Every minute that he could, he says, he tried to drag the company down. And the only reason that CM Punk is back, he said, is because he's burned every other bridge. He's failed at every single other thing. And the check is here. He's back for the money. And because he's got nowhere else to go. I love the idea of Seth being that voice of no. Starting from that podcast that changed wrestling forever into every interview that you did after, whether you're on a red carpet for something or whatever you were, all the veiled and not so veiled shots you took when you were in AEW, like you've done nothing but drag this company into the ground. And Seth Rollins' character is one that fights, has the integrity, right? That Seth Rollins, whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, he prides himself on being the best wrestler in the best organization. He's got an old school mentality. And the way Drew McIntyre doesn't like that people have forgotten what Roman Reigns and the Bloodline did, the way that Kevin Owens doesn't like the way that people are not watching what Kevin Owens is doing to him, Seth Rollins doesn't like that fans have not realized, and maybe the rest of the locker room has not realized, this is the same guy that he finds to be a snake. And this is the same guy that he said a year before he came back that he didn't want to see CM Punk back. And now he is. And even though Punk has been back in WWE for a year, and has done nothing but excellent work, has had nothing but stories of being a great guy, good to work with, fun to be around. Seth doesn't want to hear any of it. He hasn't forgiven even slightly. So, again, shockingly, I love that the past of CM Punk isn't being let go. I love in wrestling when people won't let go of the past, because I was watching. And it's like, yep, I remember. We're addressing this? Oh, good. And I'm sitting there going like, this thing is, going back to Drew McIntyre and what he's doing with the Bloodline, this next story for CM Punk and Seth Rollins is already amazing. It's already unbelievable. And, are you going to do it as soon as January 6th? And if it is January 6th, are you doing Punk versus Rollins on the same Raw as you're doing Roman versus Solo? Now, look, maybe that first Raw won't be the only big one. Maybe they'll want you to watch after just 1 week, and they'll go, okay, we've got January 13th to do on Netflix as well. Maybe January 13th is where they'll do Seth Rollins versus CM Punk. Maybe Seth Rollins versus CM Punk will be at Saturday night's main event in January. Maybe CM Punk versus Seth Rollins will be a big match at the Royal Rumble. I don't know. I mean, it feels so big, man. That match feels so big that I almost want it on a pedestal. And even if it were at a Royal Rumble show, Royal Rumble and Elimination Chamber, there can be big matches, but if it's not a world title match at one of those shows, you're still playing second fiddle to world title and the match the show is named after, whether it's the Royal Rumble match itself or the Elimination Chamber match itself. So it becomes difficult to really stand out and get your just due for what's amazing. Now, at the same time, too, are we just getting one CM Punk versus Seth Rollins match? Maybe this is something we set up where we have one, and then we get to a rematch at WrestleMania somehow. I don't know. Unless, by the way, as I said, WWE learns from looking at those social media numbers. Maybe they see the social media numbers that Punk and Roman got at War Games, and they go, we got to do Punk and Roman at WrestleMania now. So, Seth, you're going to be over here, so let's do Seth and Punk there. I mean, there's just so many potential giant matches. And every time you put those two superstars together, it just ends up being this thing that is colossal. And part of that is because you got these massive superstars that we've all been watching. But the second part really is that it's a story that has depth that we can really sink our teeth into. And that's been kind of the commonality about everything that we've talked about going on right now in every big story in the WWE. It was a big story that the New Day showed up on Raw. Nuclear heat for the New Day. Absolutely loved it. Seeing the wrestlers not like them. Cody's ashamed of the New Day. People not wanting to talk to him, and they got that Dominic Mysterio heat. I thought it was great. You got all kinds of stuff. I will tell you this before we get to emails. AEW had a big moment on Dynamite. Toni Storm returns at the end of Dynamite, and she's in her old gear. Timeless Toni is gone, and OG Toni is back, right? And people love, by the way, you got to admit, people do find sport in any decision that AEW makes that is even remotely questionable. People love to harp on it, and they love to go like, these people don't know what they're doing. Like, there were people that were like, why would you get her away from Timeless Toni Storm? And it's like, at some point you have to. And why not continue to tell a story? I thought it was really cool that she was back. I thought it was unexpected. I did wish that they had made a little bit of a bigger deal on television over the fact that Timeless Toni had retired. On the internet, she had posted a thing that she had retired from wrestling. So I feel like if they had made kind of a bigger deal that she had retired and then she shows up in this new outfit, you'd have less casual fans going, why isn't she timeless anymore? You'd have everybody on board with the fact that Timeless Toni Storm is retired. So, of course, she's back to OG Toni Storm. Now, a lot of stuff makes more sense when you start to unpack it, or maybe it's just I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt and taking my time to find logic where there is none. But I think that sometimes in AEW, stuff needs to be a little bit more spelled out and almost told in order so that people kind of get what's going on. Because I'm just now starting to understand why, it's this big news that Toni Storm is back and she's amazing. And I'm just looking at her going like, oh, this is the next big female star in wrestling. Like when I say big female star, I mean big, big, big female star. It's crazy how much that character did for her. And now that she's out of that character, she has the opportunity to just be enormous. It's awesome to see. But then I was like, her first match back's on Rampage. She had a match with Harley Cameron on Rampage. And Harley Cameron is fantastic too, by the way. Harley Cameron is severely underrated. She is so damn entertaining and so not like anyone else right now. I am a huge Harley Cameron fan. But I am going, why are you having Toni Storm's first match back in AEW on Rampage? That really makes no sense to me. Like, this should be a big deal. This should be a big Dynamite match that you advertise, maybe 2 weeks in advance. Toni Storm's getting back in the ring as Toni Storm Classic. And you're like, that's cool. But then she did something on Collision where Thunder Rosa was cutting a promo on Mariah May, and Toni Storm showed up and introduced herself and said, hey, I'm Toni Storm. It's so nice to meet you. I'm so excited to be here. And then a graphic came out that said Toni Storm was all elite. And I go, oh. And I watch closely. So if it's taking me this long to get it, and maybe I'm behind the 8 ball on this one, but I don't think so. I go, oh, I see. So whatever sort of, amnesia thing that Toni Storm had when she was Timeless Toni has hit her again, where she doesn't remember anything about Timeless Toni. And she thinks that she's back to where she was when she first got to AEW, which is why her first match would be on Rampage. Because she doesn't think that she's coming off of this Toni Storm run. She doesn't think that she's this main event person. She doesn't remember any of it, and instead thinks she's back to square one. And if she were back to square one, where would she debut? Rampage. It's the only logical explanation I can come up with. And I think that that's it. I think I figured it out. And quite frankly, I'm very proud of myself for figuring it out. I think that I deserve quite the pat on the back, because I've heard a lot of people, myself included, going, this makes no sense. I don't understand why this would happen. And me going, I'm not a pessimistic person. I'm an optimistic person. There has to be some explanation to this. And I go, oh, I wonder if that's it. I wonder if I can't wait to see if I'm right about that, because I haven't found anybody that can explain it at all, or certainly any better than that. Emails. Let's get to the emails. It's been such a week. I'm sure there are quite a few topics that everybody wants to talk about. Email in notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Notsamwrestling@gmail.com is the email address. By the way, I wanted to talk about Logan Paul's retirement, which I believe, as much as I believe that he didn't know the difference between work and shoot, this is not true. Logan Paul is not retired. And I wanted to talk more about the New Day, but there's just so much going on right now. Let's get to these emails. NotSamWrestling@gmail.com is the email address. All right, this is a long one. Since this is the first email, I'm going to do it, but it's a long one. This is from Argo, who says, hello, Sam, the OPTC. Consider yourself acknowledged. That's right.
I love you solo.
After Saturday night's main event, I was sent into a spiral of wild speculatory endeavors. I love that. Turned wild fantasy booking. One does tend to lead to the next. For what's to come in the build-up for WrestleMania 41. Okay, we did a lot of that, I feel like, today. So clearly, we're on the same page here. Okay, this is what Argo thinks. And I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. To start off, the Final Boss returns on the Raw Netflix debut to interfere in Roman's solo match, giving Solo the win. Okay, you're already departing from me. We learned that the Final Boss has been behind the Bloodline 2.0. Also on this Raw, Seth takes out Punk, setting off their feud for WrestleMania. Okay, two things. Number one, I don't think it makes sense that the Final Boss would be behind the Bloodline 2.0. because Solo Sikoa is the tribal chief. I do think it's okay if The Rock supports the Bloodline 2.0, but the idea that it was me, Austin, it was me all along. I don't think the Bloodline 2.0 needs a greater power. I just think they need a solid support. And Seth takes out Punk, setting off their feud for WrestleMania. The feud is set off. The feud has happened. I mean, it's already, what are you talking about? It's been going for 2 weeks already. It's set the hell off. So we don't, that one's, I don't know. You got to watch the product, sir, or madam. Leading up to the Rumble, in a Cody Rhodes and KO face-off, Randy returns and attacks KO, who escapes, leaving Cody and Randy alone in the ring. Randy hits Cody with an RKO out of nowhere, setting up a triple threat at the Rumble. From here, we start seeing cracks in Cody's character. Okay. Okay. I still think that it would leave KO a little like, what about just me? But okay. The Royal Rumble Premium Live event starts off with Sami Zayn winning the men's Rumble match. In the main event, Kevin Owens comes out on top. Okay, Sami Zayn's winning the Rumble this year. The PLE, Kevin Owens comes, Sami Zayn comes out. So you're saying the PLE is going to end with a stare down, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. So after everything, and by the way, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens are literally two of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Rock, Roman Reigns, CM Punk, John Cena, Seth Rollins, and I'm missing people. Randy Orton, Jacob Fatu. Seth and are Sami and Kevin really going to stare down each other at the end of that show? Next time we see Cody, he calls out for KO. He seems desperate. Instead, he gets the final boss, who reminds Cody of what he was handed last year. The week after, Cody reveals it to be a piece of the Ulafala. Why would The Rock have a piece of the Ulafala? Roman confronts Cody for having known of The Rock shenanigans all this time. This eventually sets up night 2 of WrestleMania, triple threat between Cody, The Rock, and Roman. Cody is not really himself in this buildup. I wouldn't either, because it makes no sense. This leaves the World Heavyweight title at the Elimination Chamber in Toronto. The night ends with Cena winning the chamber, ending his final appearance in the city, where he announced his retirement with a huge win. He goes on to face Gunther at WrestleMania. Cena expressing nothing but respect, Gunther showing none in return, saying his favorite wrestler is Nikki Bella. You sent that in the afternoon. This feels like you would have sent it very late at night, like sleep deprived. But I appreciate the email. Tyler writes in, greetings OPTC. I love you.
I love you, Solo.
I would like to hear your thoughts on the current main roster championship landscape. That's a huge question and feels like I kind of did it with this entire podcast. With the exception of the WWE title and the women's tag team titles, every main roster champion is a heel. All right, let's see if you're right. Gunther is clearly turning babyface, in my opinion. Although I loved it when he was not letting anybody touch him, but it feels like he's half a babyface. Braun Breaker's not a full heel. Tag team champions on Raw, the Judgment Day, they're heels. On SmackDown, Cody, obviously you said that was the exception. Shinsuke just won the United States Championship from LA Knight, so there's a heel that's now, and DIY just won the tag team championships from Babyface Tag Team. I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I just find it very interesting how skewed the titles are towards heels. I mean, literally as of this week. As of this week, like last week, every title on SmackDown was held by Babyface. Does it simply all come down to the old adage of being more interesting when the babyfaces are chasing something? No, you just have to. I mean, titles change, and generally, good guys fight bad guys. Look, I love to go deep, but when you're digging and there's just nothing there, you don't need to just keep digging. You know what I mean? There's treasure somewhere. I promise you. There's treasure elsewhere on the beach. But you don't have to dig deeper if there's no treasure. Start digging a new hole. Kaysen writes in, Hey, Sam, I had the same prediction as Megan Morant. I thought Cody would win clean and then Randy would come at RKO. Do you think a rematch with KO will happen for Raw and Netflix premiere and Randy returns? No, I don't. Look, I could see a triple threat at the Rumble for sure. Randy, KO, and Cody. But I think that, like, this is what I was saying earlier. Also, was the crowd turning on Cody? No. And people have said this. The crowd was not turning on Cody. Obviously, it's a different scenario because Kevin Owens won with a clean finish. They were in Long Island, a lot of smartasses in Long Island, and everybody saw something really cool. The idea of Kevin Owens doing his first package pile driver in his 10-year run in WWE. The idea of Triple H coming out, like, it was a hot angle. So people are going to cheer for the hot angle. But no, I don't think Cody Rhodes is in any trouble at all. And, you know, I also am not any longer saying associating the Kevin Owens Cody Rhodes story as if it's there to serve up to Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes. Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes got something going, and I think it's that's the story to tell right now. It'll get to Randy Orton, but Patrick writes in, I believe just after the Roman Reigns promo laying down the challenge to Solo, Michael Cole said tribal combat, and Roman Reigns said tribal combat too. Which I believe is the same as Bloodline rules. No, it is not. Tribal combat is when people are fighting for the right of tribal chief. Bloodline rules, there's been 2 Bloodline rules matches. It was Cody and Roman at WrestleMania. And then the other one was Solo and Cody at SummerSlam. There's been 1 tribal combat match. Unless they did one on TV. Jey Uso versus Roman Reigns was tribal combat. Because if Jey Uso had beaten Roman Reigns, he was going to be the tribal chief. So, tribal combat might also be an anything goes match, but they're not the same. I know the rule set has been done before. I always thought the decision should only come by one way, acknowledgement. No submit, no pin. I remember when Roman versus Jey, Hell in a Cell was an I Quit match, and Roman made Jimmy acknowledge him to stop Roman. I think it truly fits the story in every aspect. Yes, moving on to Drew saying 4 to go. Could 4 be Cody? Cody didn't really get anything out of teaming with Roman for that tag match. I mean, maybe, but Solo makes more sense. Again, losing has consequences, right? If Solo loses, do the Tongans turn? Look, you're right. Stop trying to squeeze questions into this email. But I think that if it's an acknowledgement rule, the only way to lose the match is acknowledgement. You have to be prepared for it to be a full and final blow-off match. It gives you no room to wiggle out of it. And I don't know if you want to do that for the first time Roman and Solo have a match. Manny writes in, hello, my PTC, long-time listener, first-time emailer. I acknowledge you.
I love you, Solo!
My question is, we see all the modern-day sports updating its rules all the time to make the sport safer. Example, Kenny Pickett, fake slide in college, removed the following year. Right. Why don't WWE and AEW finally put in an end of heels cheating or constant interference and add a second ref on the outside of the ring? What's one rule would you update in modern wrestling? Well, generally updating the rules in wrestling historically have been a bad thing. You know, when Bill Watts took over WCW and it was like, no over the top. You couldn't throw people over the top rope. You couldn't jump off the top rope. It became this thing where people said, well, no, it actually just makes it more possibilities because then it has to mean something when they come off the top rope. The heels have to figure out a way to do it, but I never liked it because there's a way of doing it. Having a second ref on the outside, it's like sometimes stories in professional wrestling need interference. You know, I don't think interference is plaguing wrestling so much that needs to change. I think it comes down to like smaller things like, you know, the pile driver being outlawed or whatever it is. But I don't look at wrestling. First of all, sports fans don't like it when they change the rules. I've never heard a football fan going like, oh, good, the rules are going to be different this year. They always complain about it. So looking at what goes on in sports and going, what do the fans not like? We should start doing that. I don't see it as logical for wrestling to do that. Jeremy writes in, I was at Monday Night Raw in Everett, my first time sitting front row. Oh, it's the first time, my first time sitting front row. I mean, I was an adult by the time I finally got to sit front row, and it was so, I mean, it's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Right by the entryway. Normally, I'm pretty subdued. Even when I'm having a great time, I'm quiet. But being so close to the action, I felt pressure to react more. Like I owed it to the performers to give them a good reaction. Have you ever been in the front row at a wrestling show, and did you feel that pressure? I've been in the front row, as a matter of fact, I have many wrestling shows. I was watching the Kevin Owens retrospective, and he was talking about on YouTube. It's great, by the way. It's on WWE's YouTube channel. And he was talking about his match with Stone Cold at WrestleMania. And they showed Stone Cold pinning him. And you can see in the corner, I'm front row behind the commentators, and I've still got a suit on. And I'm just like, my hands over the rail going, 1, 2, 3. Is it okay to enjoy the show quietly, or should I try to be more expressive? People, whether you're in the front row or the last row, and by the way, I've been in the last row too. Whether you're in the front row or the last row, professional wrestling is an escape. Professional wrestling exists for us to enjoy it and for us to get, there's a purity out of it where it is for us. I enjoy professional wrestling the way I enjoy professional wrestling. I like having Megan on the show because she enjoys professional wrestling the way she enjoys professional wrestling. Jeremy, you enjoy professional wrestling the way you enjoy professional wrestling. I do not think it should be judged how people react. I think if you are having a great time, because I've gone to shows where I've been like, you know what? I'm exhausted. I've got a lot on my mind. I've had a hell of a day. I just want to sit in this chair and absorb the experience. And I'm enjoying it. I look back on those shows extremely fondly. But I'm not like going over the top, jumping up and down, because that's how I was enjoying it at the time. And I don't think, if we're judging each other as wrestling fans, then we've kind of lost the plot. So no, dude, you should maximize your enjoyment. Whatever that looks like to me doesn't matter. All right, this is a long one. Dear Sam, not Sam, big fan of the podcast. I had no idea how much I needed that weekly wrestling discussion. I've been watching WWE since this past WrestleMania XL. Wow, after not watching since the Attitude Era. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. With all that out of the way, when Joe Test kicked off Saturday night's main event, I thought I was listening to Mean Gene there for a second. Then he had the bow tie on, the narrow entrance, and that old school logo. Even the ropes seemed looser with all the throwbacks. Had me zeked up. It's like McAfee. This week on Raw, when Cody told Woods and Kingston he's to be ashamed, Woods mentioned how Cody was not a good guy in high school. Rule number 3, everything counts. Perhaps more kindling for an eventual Cody heel turn. I don't know, maybe. But I do love the idea of Cody and Xavier Woods getting into a rivalry because Cody was a dick in high school. Second thing I would like to point out is wardrobe changes. When Woods first started to show signs of turning heel, one big clue was the wardrobe colors changed to all black and gray. Absolutely. Also, Seth is becoming more of a badass. While his outfits are still very Seth, they're, are mostly black, white, and leather. Very rock and roll, heavy metal-esque. Yes, you got the big, turquoise sleeves, but still the black leather base. Sure. More potential evidence Seth could go full heel in the near future. I don't think that's necessarily true. I just think that it's the story that's being told right now. The clothes are part of the story, which leads me to my third piece of speculation. I've been thinking about this ever since they pointed out Seth also hates Punk, but now Sami Zayn has just compared Rollins to McIntyre. You have no idea how much I would love to see Seth and Drew team up, even if only for one match. I absolutely love Drew. He is literally my number one favorite wrestler, and think this would be great for both characters. I mean, you could, and it could be a fun Saturday night's main event match to do Seth, Drew, and Kevin versus Roman, Cody, and Punk. You could also do Seth, Drew, and Kevin versus Roman and the Usos, or Roman, Jay, and Sammy, depending on Jimmy's injury status, Big Jim. But Roman, Punk, Cody versus Seth, Drew, and KO could be absolutely magical. All right, last email. This one's coming from Jeff. My original and only podcast tribal chief. That's right. If I may have a moment of your time, I think I have an idea you might like. I wonder if WWE could benefit from a tag team Money in the Bank briefcase. No, I don't think so. I'm doing another email. Reese writes in, hi, Sam. With Kevin Owens using the pile driver on Randy and Cody, do you think we could see Randy pull out the punt kick in this story? I think so. I absolutely think so. I think it would be, okay, I got to do this one. I think it would be good. Okay, this is the last email because the subject line is Kevin Owens is goated. And I love it when people are goated. I think Kevin Owens might be goated. The fact that, like, again, it starts with a conversation about Kevin leading to Randy and Cody, and now it's just like, just give me Kevin and Cody. Let you know how goated Kevin Owens is. Sup, Sam, 14th time emailer here. I mean, I'm Pancho. Greetings from Ecuador. Your subject line hit me, man. Not only, I'm so happy to see how trusted Kevin Owens is by the WWE. Not only was he trusted to be the one to bring Stone Cold out of retirement in a no DQ match, not only was he trusted to do a pile driver on Randy Orton with severe back issues and on the face of the company, Cody Rhodes, but he was also trusted to get physical with Triple H. I know he only shoved him a couple of times, but someone who has relatives with heart issues, shoving can be a really risky thing to do to them. I love that you try to shove your relatives. They're like, no, I have heart issues. This only shows how much of a pro Kevin Owens is and how safely he works. Give him the strap ASAP. Kevin Owens is goated, dude. Kevin Owens is goated. I would definitely watch that retrospective that they put on WWE's YouTube channel. I appreciate you all. Make sure you're subscribed on any audio platforms, Apple, Spotify, Sirius app, whatever you listen on. Make sure you leave a rating. Make sure you leave a review, comments on Spotify, the whole deal. Also, make sure you're watching the podcast every week. Make sure you're on YouTube, youtube.com/Notsam Wrestling, leaving a comment, hitting like, subscribing to the channel, and being here when we see you again next week, if not a whole lot sooner.